Please give a warm welcome to one of the greatest filmmakers, Alejandro González Iñárritu. He is coming. We're What an honor to have you here, Alejandro. I was telling you right before while we were walking here that the first time I saw the film was at Telluride, and I was in line for another film, and somebody grabbed me and they said, well, what did you think of Bardo? It seems like it was just done on the fly. And I have never been more angry with somebody. I told them, I said, are you kidding me? There is so much precision in this film. Everything has been thought out, right? I mean, everything. The amount of work that you did before shooting this film must have been tremendous.
Yes. Well, thank you for having me here, Roger. Thank you very much, everybody, for being here tonight. Thank you. Very happy. Well, in a strange way, what you are telling me make me happy, because I think it's a praise in a way when people feel that things were just being captured and the camera was just floating and everybody was just like, hey, let's just have this scene. And in a strange way, you are right. Also, I mean, it took me 7 years to put this film together, and it was the most challenging technical film that I have done by many reasons that I can tell you. But always my goal is that nobody should care about it, nobody should notice, nobody should be distracted, and everything should feel light, so like easy, not being distracted, in order to have the great experience. So in a way, the feeling that it was easy, in a way, makes me happy. But you are right. It was to make it feel like it was just like, oh, let's just have this fun moment. It took us like a lot of precision, a lot of work. You know?
Speaking of precision, I want to talk about the scene where you go to the California club where you guys all remember where he dances to the David Bowie song. That's a 7-minute sequence. All the worlds, the past, present, future, all the worlds collide onto him. And that scene is just, I mean, I've watched it a few times and it's mind-boggling. Can you walk us through creating and filming that sequence?
Basically, this is a space that is called the California Dancing Club, and that's why I love it, because it's a classic temple of the salsa, and where Fanny All-Stars and all these guys in the 80s, this is a cathedral of dance where taxi drivers, intellectuals, pop stars, politicians, got together, and it was a classic. Now it's run down, but it allowed like 14,000 people to be there. So it's a massive kind of a space and has a kind of a texture that is delicious and run down, but with some character, So anyway, I was clear that this scene should be a moment of joy and color where cumbia and death are together dancing, like very Mexican, like all the things just collide, or like there's a coexistence of madness and joy, but politicians and anyway, and the family. To get the family, we introduce the girl, the daughter, friends, ex-friends, collaborators, enemies, all this kind of society that he felt surrounded, that he belonged but doesn't belong. But there's the joy, and I want to have like the internal experience of him using the a cappella kind of moments that I use it 3 times in the film. But this was the extreme. So we shot this in the middle of the pandemic. I had to stop 3 times the film because of the pandemic. And there was like 800 extras. There was no AC. Everybody was coughing and sniffing and farting and smoking. And also, I mean, it looks like a joyful scene, but it was hell to make it. These are the details that nobody should know. And it took a long of days. But the thing is, what I did is, with Darius Konji, which I think he deserved an applause
Incredible
because Darius did an amazing
DP.
job. Amazing job. Basically, what we did is that seeing those kind of spaces has like very horrible light, no, like very top light white. So the amount of light that we have to bring with the console and everything has to be controlled. So what I did is first I start rehearsing with real dancers from there, beautiful people working dance, and then with the actors trying to find how I'm gonna be introduced and how the camera should be moved to hide some things and then discover one thing and blah, blah, blah. And the music was preconceived. Since I wrote the script, I knew what songs it would be. So with Martin Hernandez, what I did is we rehearsed with the band. The band has to sound exactly as Willie Colon and Hector Lavoe. And it was rehearsing, and it has to be there. Then the girl has to applaud, Jimena has to applaud, and at that moment, that's not post-production. All the music was edited, was played by the band.
Correct.
Then in this moment, there was a guy that introduced the music, and then when she applauded, so all the music was cut. So we rehearsed with the music for a couple of days, and then finally we shot it. It took us like 6 weeks to really get it right because we were having an incredible shot. Oh my God, it's great. And suddenly an extra was like doing like that, and you know what I mean, that kind of thing. So it was very difficult to get it right.
But also, sorry I interrupt, but I was blown away by the detail of the costume design where colors, the important characters that we were supposed to focus on, they're color-coded. Right?
Yes, absolutely. Every character has a color, I think.
That scene, it's mind-boggling.
And in all the film, I think, obviously, Silverio's always dressed with the same dress, with the same jacket and the same thing. He's just have one change during the whole film. I want him to be just like a ghost, and he's obviously a walk in his consciousness, so he don't have to be worried about clothes. And then, Lucia is in blue, Jimena is in green, the boy, Iker, is in yellows. And we decided something very nice with Ana Terrazas, the wardrobe designer, which was, Mexico is a very colorful country, as you know, and there's a lot of patterns, stripes and things like that. But there was something very beautiful. We decided that there was no patterns in the film. So all the clothes are very, very inspiring in Vivian Mayer, the American photographer from the 60s. We were super in love with this chromatic kind of thing. So we took out every stripes. There's no jeans. I didn't put any jeans because the jeans, in a way, were making. And all the clothes belong in every scene to different, in all the extras. And everything is different years. You see a wardrobe from the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s. So it was kind of the life of these guys. So you see a mix of period of time blend. Nobody should notice, but you feel that there's something off and looks very nice, I think.
Past, present, future, they're all colliding. A lot of people, when they see your film, they think, the influence of Fellini. And, no disrespect to Fellini. I adore Fellini. But one of the things that I was blown away by your film is the influences of Octavio Paz, Juan Rubio, Borges, Latin American literature and its impact on your film. Can you tell us about?
Absolutely. I think, as you said, there's great filmmakers. One of them, obviously, is Fellini, as many others, like Godard or Roy Anderson or Tarkovsky. There's many people that has really blend and mesh time, space, and has teach us how to dream in cinema. But I will go to mention that Buñuel here was very important, or Jodorowsky was important too. There's filmmakers in the Spanish-speaking territories that we have a huge, old, and ancient tradition, even from the Aztecs or before the Aztecs. The way our culture has been always conceiving time and space ancestrally is enmeshed, is blended. So all the literature in the last, I will say, second half of the last century, the Latin American boom came with these guys that, teach us how to really write our own stories where we are liberating just from the rational thing and just by experience our narrow nervous system that informs us very little. But existence or reality is bigger than that. We know that dreams really count. We cannot subestimate our subconscious. And we need like a third eye to see reality. So, and obviously in this case, because what happened to Silverio at the very end, we are here in a walk of the consciousness of somebody which last minutes all his life is being played. So what I'm saying is, yes, we are, and visually the muralists like Rivera or Rosco and all these guys really always paint the cosmical with the religious, with the political, with the anthropological. We are used to this kind of thing in Latin America, and I think I come from that very obviously, you know. Yeah. So yeah, I'm glad that you identified that, because it's not only the Anglo and Western's influence, which I feel very good about it because I know very well the history of the art, especially in this country. But we have our own things too, you know.
Correct, and you're tapping into that brilliantly. You mentioned slightly, and I want to go back to the fact that this film, you navigate from very fragile, intimate moments to this universal scope within seconds. And tell us about navigating that dynamic of, in one scene, it's microscopic, very private, personal, intimate, to this big scope, universal.
I think it's not our life like that, no? So, I mean, I think we construct our life in very intimate, interior spaces, emotions, feelings. We are, you know, building that, but suddenly in the car we are thinking about our own death, or the death of our father, or suddenly about the world war, or Putin putting nuclear bombs, and suddenly our mind goes to another kind of territory, and then suddenly our daughter called, and we are dealing with the dog shit in the living room, and, you know. So we are always navigating between the absurd and the, you know, illogic and funny or irrelevant with transcendental, metaphysical fears and questions. So isn't not our life like that? So that's why I want to honor that. Like, the life of this guy is made of all these things that count, some of them no count, sometimes cosmical, sometimes spiritual, sometimes very depth, sometimes kind of shallow, sometimes about the ego and his public persona, and sometimes by his own interior fears and very honest, naked things. So yeah, it took a lot of time, especially to put them together, to be honest, and throw it out, and then how to blend it to make sense of what doesn't make sense.
Tell us how working with your co-screenwriter, Nicolas Giacobone, you know, you guys dive deep into introspection and the subconscious. I love. And one of the things that should be celebrated about this film is that a story without a story, we're used to Act 1, Act 2, Act 3, and this sort of classical paradigm of narrative, and you go against the grain. But writing it and the process of creating it, can you give us an insight of what it was like?
Yeah, it was a very unusual thing. The fabric of this film is made of dreams, memories, fears, regrets, and emotions. And I always said that I have done a lot of films, and three works I have done about immigration, and I did it with my open eyes and experiences and seeing the reality. And this film, I did it with my eyes closed. I really need to go to introspection and inward, and that's a scary journey because I have to identify acupuncturally, not the facts, not the reality, just like what things really I have been dealing in the last 20 years. And I didn't care if it was true or not. I think it was, as the character said, there's no truth in memory, it's just emotional conviction. Because our memories, memories doesn't exist. We create them. And they transform with time. And when we get older, the memories get different. And we accommodate to our emotional needs. And we are confronted with that. And the facts doesn't matter. It's about the way it makes us feel. A person that we remember makes us feel invigorated and happy. And other ones just make us miserable. Doesn't matter. We don't remember well when it happened. And doesn't really care. It's about that. Right. So I was really working with that material. And then the funny or the challenging is to turn it into an idea. And then that idea becomes a sequence. And I said, okay, this is about that. This is about adolescents challenge you. as my daughter or my son, in a way, when all like adolescents, we challenge our father. And we were dealing with something about identity, about broken identity, about where we belong. That was a theme. Or my father, what I would have loved to tell to my father. I think we all will love to talk to people that is not anymore here, to have the opportunity. So again, it was a way for me to deal with very truthful things, but use fiction in a way to reveal things and represent things in a higher truth way. I mean, to find something better than just like, oh, this happened and then it happened, because I don't care about what happened. It's about what it was. And then we have 32 sequences. And then we start saying, okay, how we threaten this. You know, it was like all the cards, and then start to get some sense of emotional rhythm. You know?
But you mentioned, you talked about identity, but you also deal with success, and then you deal with mortality in one passage. Was that systematic? Is it like, I want to tackle identity, I want to tackle success, I want to tackle mortality, and...
You know, it's funny that you mentioned that, because now that you mentioned, I never thought about themes, or I was not saying, oh, okay, this film's going to be about that. I didn't know what it was going to be about. Honestly, it was a very mysterious kind of thing, and I think it came from involuntary memory, which is a great source of imagination, and to just open the heart and open that with no fear or with fear, but you swallow the fear, and then you said, okay. And suddenly, when the themes were, or the things or the memories were there, the wounds, you know, in a way, and suddenly there was a light, as Leonard Cohen said, no, that there's a crack in everything.
Correct.
And it's where the lights come in. And that from that crack of that wound, suddenly I saw something and said, oh. And then it became about something, but it was not the intention. It was something, a memory that suddenly, yes, this is an important memory. You know?
But you also tapped into your own personal memories, but then take us to collective memories of Mexico. And was that always from the get-go the idea that I'm going to deal with my personal memories, but also the collective memory of us as Mexican, of you as Mexican people?
Yes, because I think in that sense I knew that there was a lot of things, reflections that come from intellectual fears, that the intellect is part of my existence, but it's not all. I have a spiritual interior life, I have a sensorial life, I have a biological life, but there's an intellectual thing that is part of my story, and the collective memory of my country who make all of us who we are as a community, and I'm part of that, I come from that, and these wounds, the conquest, is something inevitably that it comes from all of us. That's where we all come from.
Correct.
From a mixed country, mixed race country. I have 70% or 72 European blood, but I have 19% of indigenous blood, and I have 2% of Jewish blood, and I already did that thing that they do. And it was
DNA.
like, whoa, yeah, we all have that, you know. Trump will be maybe surprised that he has some indigenous blood too.
Yeah.
Maybe he will commit suicide, but anyway, but we all are like that, you know.
Yeah.
So what I'm saying is, yes, and obviously the American and Mexican story, we are completely involved in our story, in our culture. So that Mexican-American war is a huge wound that is still, that has not been,
So you have the Spanish. You have first the conquistador. The Spanish conquest. Then you have the U.S. Mexican War, and then you have the disappeared.
And then the French.
And then the French.
The French in the castle. One French emperor lived there. So
but those, when you were crafting the film, those are pillars of the story. You have this pivotal moments in Mexican history that help frame the story.
Yes, and those were from the past, but then there's another thing that I was very interested, which was to talk about the 130,000 people that have disappeared now at this moment. So those bodies, if we will put it in the street, will be worse than, it's kind of a conquest. I mean, like a crime. So can you imagine in full democracy, a country that has 130,000 disappear and impunity, and there is no trace, and and the government is not talking about it. We just normalize something. That's why I want to have in the present people just walking, and there's a woman there, and then. So those are my fears. When I arrived to Mexico, I'm afraid sometimes I said, I can disappear like that, and nobody will know, or my family member, whatever. So what I'm saying is, again, all fears and wounds, present ones, or a futuristic fear that, okay, Amazon will buy Baja California, which I'm sure this guy will do it one time, I'm sure. And many people will celebrate to be, Jeff Bezos' employee.
Did you ever, Alejandro, you're looking at your ideas and your thoughts and you're plotting this out. Did you ever think, like, oh my God, the cojones to try to visualize this, and you actually do it. I mean, the fact that, Silverio is talking to Hernan Cortez in a pyramid of dead Mayans and Aztecs. Did you ever question yourself, the madness?
Yeah, I think I have been punished by being mad, and I'm happy when people in the reviews just like saying, this guy is an idiot. Well, yes, I am, but our life is idiotic, because, our memories and things, yes, if I can, I was very honest to say, these are the things that are happening in my mind, in my soul, in my fears. I guess I'm not from Mars. I think I shared this with millions of people. I think I shared this emotion with millions of immigrants. We were talking just in the hotel about your feelings about it. I think I shared this with the third culture, with the hybrid culture. All these memories belong. And I say, why not? I think I have arrived to a moment that I felt that I needed to do something that it will be, from a personal perspective, sharing universal themes, and have fun. Honestly, I always said that this film is about snorkeling. It's just to see the things from the surface and see the depths of the sea, but with the light, with the grace, and you see the depth. But there's a fun that suddenly this guy is burning the ass, and suddenly it's like a shooting, and all the attempt to do the conquest. That's why that film has never been done, and every film director has dreamed to do the conquest, but it's impossible. That's why I laugh about even the attempt to portray one of the biggest encounters in humanity. Or I laugh about the Mexican War, because there's the wounds and all these kind of mythological things in our narrative that born United States saying that was a war. No, it was an invasion. And we making from that defeat a victory. And the president every year, he just honored the kids that were heroes. No, there was not heroes. They were slaughtered. They were just 13 years old. So anyway, I'm just laughing a little bit about the narratives that we put ourselves, and to have fun about that. I think that's a fun thing.
I think that anybody who watches this film and calls you idiotic is maybe you're too ambitious or whatever, but idiotic, it's the last adjective I would think about watching this film. I read that the only actor in the film, Jimenez Camacho, was the one that got the full script, that all the other actors that play the family just got their scenes. Can you tell us about that choice and why was that done?
Yeah, I have with Daniel Jimenez Cacho this encounter, a dinner. I knew it was him, not only because he's a great actor, and he carried the film in his shoulder, and we have been married for 30 years, both of us. We have kids the same age. We are from the same generation, from the same city. And our interior life, in a way, found themselves we coincide in a lot of things. So I knew he was the guy who will understand. And I didn't want him to rationalize. So I just gave it to him to read once. And I said, please, don't study. There is no an arc of a character. There is no like act 1, act 2, blah, blah, blah. There's no actorish thing. Here is just the presence that I need. And I don't know if it happened to you, but when we dream and we have lucid dreams, which means that we are aware that we are dreaming and we know that we are dreaming, which is a fantastic experience. I want the film to feel like that for the audience. So, I want to put the audience in these context, wide-angle things, to feel that you are, in a way, observing things. But when you are in a dream, knowing that you don't react, you just observe, you just don't respond. As in a film, when you are seeing somebody who will kill somebody, you don't stand up from your seat and don't kill it. No, you don't react, you just observe, and you know that you are watching a film, that you are dreaming.
Correct.
As the film of the dreams play in our screen like that way. So I want him to be just navigating with incredible presence, which is the most difficult thing to do in the acting. And I think only with his eyes, the father scene in the bedroom and things like that, he don't move his thing. He's just truly naked emotionally, and he was doing his exercise about his own father, his relation, his own kids. So he owns all those things. He was not playing me. He was just really owning and honoring every moment of his emotional strugglings or things. And it was fantastic to see it. And I didn't want any of the kids or anybody else to read it because there was no sense. I just want these to be slices of life, that they were not going to any place. In a dream, there is no structure. Actually, you cannot demand logic. So I want everybody to be just present and being passing as in a dream without studying it. That's the reason I never.
There must have been, I mean, I watched sequences where your actors, especially the ones that play the family members, where it's long takes, where they have to be emoting and present. Was it difficult for them, or?
Yes, I think we went to an hacienda in December before we start shooting, and we rehearse and we discuss about the scenes and motivations and these characters. You know what I mean? I want them to understand. Funny enough, the emotional baggage and circumstances of each of them is very similar, as Daniel is very similar to mine. For example, Jimena, the actress, she was born in Mexico, but she went when she was 2 years old to Dubai. So she grew and lived in Dubai until she was 20 years old. So her Mexicanity was completely, her father is a pilot from Dubai Airlines. And living in Dubai as a Mexican, and then she came and started to study in New York, so she didn't know she was from Dubai, from Mexico, from the United States. So she was questioning herself. So that scene in the pool was very close to her heart. And the same with Dicker. So it was very nice to see that they can embody that by a very honest and understandable emotional situation. And they understand, and then we rehearse the blocking because, as you said, the shots were really complicated. We designed that apartment that is very classical from the 40s in Mexico, in La Colonia Roma. This one is actually in La Condesa. But I love this architecture of these Mexican buildings because they have this internal patio. And it's like a box of light all around, so we can play, and we design all the scenes and the chasing. And so it was a lot of blocking and all the pace. So they all were absolutely, body and physically and mentally know everything. And then when we were shooting, it was exhilarating because they can really improvise, but knowing as a theater that they own the scenes, So, but it took time. It took a lot of time to prepare.
I mentioned to you that Eugenio Caballero, your production designer, amazing work. Every time, the first time I saw the film, I started noticing, even in the graffiti, signs, there is, comments, and everything in the set design is important, has meaning. There's a store that says Bardo, and the graffiti says meaningful things. Can you tell us about that detail?
Yeah.
Did you mean it for people to get it on the first?
More than the effects, it's just to feel it. I don't want people to understand, but there's a lot of textures, a lot of layers that for me were important to capture right, and to capture the context of this guy in Mexico City, which became a character. He's confronting a huge city, ancestral, ancient culture that he belongs, that is not anymore what he thought, and obviously all these layers of present, past, and future is there. And I want everything, the apartment, be full of life and pictures and books and things that have been important for me. And then when he goes in the street, I remember that people said, "Where did you shot that shot? It's incredible, this city." It's Mexico City. Really, that's Mexico City? Yeah, it's Mexico City. So anyway, many people just know from Mexico just the beach or Tijuana, or they have gone to Mexico, but they have not been walking in these streets. And suddenly people does not recognize that this is Mexico. And I want, in a way, it's a love letter to Mexico. It's like to have the power of this city. And for example, when there's this discussion in the terrace between the two the ex-collaborators. There's a mural that Pedro Reyes, which is for me one of the best artists in Mexico now, a sculptor and painter, he did this mural behind with the hands like that. So we were designing that every time that he is in the street, there's signs and there's things that are mysterious and people will be discovering, you know? So you were saying that when you see it in Netflix, you will stop to see it.
Correct. I'll pause and read. It's Easter eggs all over the film, which is incredibly delicious. You spoke about your director of photography. It's shot in 65 millimeter. And from my vantage point, the fact that Silvero and his landscape, there's this huge contrast, and he seems in constant conflict with his landscape. Can you tell us about the choice of 65 millimeter and what it did for you?
Yeah, I think we knew that, and Eugenio Caballero did an amazing job, and with Darius was a dream because it was about what this guy was feeling. So when he goes to the TV show, for example, and this show that is called Supongamos, which is Let's Suppose, which is a joke about like everybody, you know, many of these guys always are supposing about it or relating your personal life with your work. And they don't understand that the person that do the work is not necessarily the same guy that eat eggs in the morning. That is not necessarily, we don't know even actually when we do things, it's coming from a very mysterious thing. Anyway, I think I want the sets and this format to capture the presence first of the actors. I think what I love about the big format of 65 and the 17 millimeters lenses that we mostly shot this film is there's a presence, a big presence about it. And then the set design was about how he felt. So this TV show, for example, he arrived to this black kind of show that apparently is like a kind of a Charlie Rose interview, very serious, and suddenly the people appear, like you don't know if it's in his mind or not, and we want to design that, and then in another there's more people laughing, and suddenly the neon start going, and if you see it like a whale, no, it's like the inside of the whale with the ribs, and it's like just everything is, and then the lights start. And suddenly become a circus of ridiculizing him, as lynching him in this kind of show, a spectacle of sometimes of these shows that they really put horrendous circumstances of people in very intimate things, and they just make a show about that. And it's very humiliating for me. I have always hated that kind of thing. But suddenly he's trapped in this kind of entertaining, and it's devouring him. So we always thought about like a whale, for example, and how the lights start evolving. So that was a beautiful combination between Darius, Eugenio, and I, trying to get what it feels, and then how that is translated to light and space, and materialize that. So that's one of the examples.
And the camera is always moving. It's restless and discovering. Can you tell us about that aspect of the camera never stops? It's constantly.
As I said, I always thought about this film as a walk in a consciousness, as a flow of consciousness, and I wanted to be always like feeling the move in light. Something is moving, or the light is moving. You don't notice, but sometimes in the apartment, the light is moving very slowly. So there's kind of a weird sensation that something, again, as in a dream, or the actors are moving and changing, foreground, background, middle ground, or the camera is moving, or the light. For example, in the kitchen scene where they discuss, which is a very long scene, and it's a very naturalistic scene about everything starts with the sunny. It's a sunny morning, and it's kind of joke, and they are in a good moment, and they are having breakfast, and then suddenly the light and there's clouds, and then the sun goes down. So the camera is very steady, it's moving very slowly, but the exterior, without noticing, suddenly turns into a cloudy day, and suddenly start windy, and then it start raining, and then there's light strike, and at the end you end up in this very darky, as happened in the families, no? You have a good time, and suddenly somebody said something idiot, and suddenly a nice day become a horrible nightmare. And I want to enlight that with the light, and something is moving outside without even noticing, but we are impacted by that. So that was my theory, the flow of light, of characters or camera, but it's a walking in the consciousness.
I want to ask you about your composer, Bryce Dresner. Incredible score. Tell us about working with him. What I admire is, I think I mentioned to you that he brings a lightness with the score. Even in very moving moments, he adds this sort of levity to the scenes with the score.
Bryce is somebody that I met in The Revenant. I went to a concert that Gustavo Dudamel invited me to the LA Philharmonic, and I saw a piece of violin that some young guy has done. I said, whoa, who is this guy? I like contemporary classical music. And it was Bryce. And then I found, oh, you are from the Nationals. You have a pop band. Oh, my God, a rock band. It's very good. Blah, blah, blah. And then he has just made projects with Steve Reich or with Tom York or with Bon Iver, and he composed classical music. He's a pop rock star, so it's an incredible eclectic musician. We became very good friends. He did the third act of The Revenant with Ryuichi Sakamoto. The last part of The Revenant he composed. So then what I knew from the beginning is I want this film to sound with metals, with trumpets or tubes. And there's a very old tradition in Mexican bands in towns like Oaxaca, where these bands are always exquisitely out of tune. And you cannot do that as an incredible academic musician. You ask them to be out of tune, they can't. Honestly, they can't. And these guys are always out of tune and out of pace, but there's something very heartfelt about that. There's a naiveness and a beauty that is impossible to replicate. And this music sounds kind of an old human traditional music from the Jewish culture or from the Serbian culture, which is this music that there's a sadness and fun. You can play it in a funeral, but you can play it in a wedding. So I want that wedding funeral feeling that is kind of nostalgic, but it's funny. And it's light, but it's profound. And I think the quality of these trumpets is a little stupid and absurd, but at the same time, there's something very primitive and ancient about it. So we knew that. And then I record some whistles in the beginning because my father was a good whistle. This story of this whistle that he's looking is true. My father took away a whistle that I don't remember, and I will have loved because that was healing for me. So anyway, those whistles become, and then he went to Mexico, and it was an incredible experience to have this tune that became kind of the melody of the whole thing.
But correct me if I'm wrong, to assume that the music was composed before the film was finished? Because at times it feels like the film is mirroring the music in a way.
The tunes were decided before, the tunes. The whistles, I knew that there will be a leitmotif of him looking for that thing, and then the wife whistle when they are making love, and then and then the mother whistle when he's trying to tell the story, and then he danced with the dad at the end. So there was a tune. It was not made, but it was a whole concept that I had it, and then the music was made after the film was edited. But conceptually, it was embedded in the script already.
I mentioned outside before we came in about the immigrant, his state of mind, the fact that I mentioned, some of you know that I was born in Panama. I came here as an immigrant, and I've never seen on film or literature capturing the fact that you feel like you don't belong anymore to where you came from, and this weird limbo space that you're in, and you captured that. Can you tell us about that state of mind that you've captured on the screen?
Yes, I think that I did a project in 2017 after The Revenant that is called Carne y Arena, and it was an installation, virtual reality installation, that it was in LACMA. And I interviewed like 500 immigrants with incredible heartbroken stories crossing the desert. Some of the family members died, the circumstances of their life back in their countries, what they were looking here, the way they felt. And anyway, it was a very beautiful, moving experience for me. And then I did, based on their stories, that. And I think that invited me and impacted me in a way that I said, and what is my story? I mean, I suddenly felt, okay, I have a different circumstances, but no matter what, I need to honor that emotion that we share, no matter if I have been privileged and a first-class immigrant, as this guy said, and this guys has not have been as lucky as I have been, but we share that very ungraspable, kind of almost impossible to explain feeling of the fractured identity, that the belonging, the fact that that once time has passed as 20 years, you want this country to be home, but actually sometimes cannot be home because somebody can challenge that. And that you sometimes did not born here, and I'm a brown-skinned guy, and sometimes that event in the airport actually happened to my wife, which is here, beautifully sitting. And I think that scene, it was dictated by her, because we have had tough experience sometimes in the border in the last years. So the experience like that, your identity is questioned externally and interiorly, and when you return to your country, sometimes you realize that there is no way back. Because the city that I left, it doesn't exist anymore. What people expect about me is not the guy that I was there, and what you expect of people is not. So it's kind of a weird, and it's not a complaining, and it's not a victimizing. It's just a fact. It's a fact that I think this country has been made of immigrants, and I think all your ancestors felt the same way when they were here in the beginning. So there's something that you miss, and there's a dual existence of the guy that was there and the guy that now exists here, and you're in between. Anyway, it's a very weird thing, and I'm glad that you felt that way, and I think I share that with millions of immigrants around the world. So there's a core about that feeling here that I'm glad that you got, and that's what this guy is struggling with, that I want to capture in film exactly.
And you, as a filmmaker, you put yourself heart and soul, and you bring personal aspects from your experience onto the screen, and you mentioned that your wife is here. How does your family feel that you expose so much of yourself on screen? And some people may guess, oh, that really happened to him. That's personal or is fictional. How do they reconcile with this?
I'm a pariah now. I'm thrown out of my house. I'm homelessness. No, I think it was a very, very honest process. I think they feel it's hard, obviously, because as my wife said, Maria, which was incredibly generous, and my two kids, it's like there's 4 stories in this family: yours, mine, Eliseo's, Maria, and everybody has a right to express it. I think that's a crucial right. And they gave me the space, and they gave me the support, and they were very honest to comment when they have to comment, but they never demand me to change or to do things. They were incredibly respectful because they understand the creative process, and everybody has a need. And again, it has been very difficult because I was not prepared. I never prepared to explain a film, because that's why I spent 3-4 years making it. And then when you try to reduce it to words or to articulate a reason, it's very hard. And this film has been, for me, every time that I open my mouth trying to explain where it comes from, blah, 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 I know that I'm damaging the film, because a dream cannot be explained. But what I'm saying is these things, is this yours? If it's your biography? No. If it's personal, extremely. So if it's you, well, no, I know that guy very well, but he's not me. You know what I mean? There's a very thin line that is called autofiction, which is not biographical, because who cares about my events? I don't care about them. And it could be the most boring, banal film in the world. I just wanted to really create it with the fiction thing, to enlighten it and arrive to something to share universally of very personal things. So actually, yes, it's an alter ego that I create to talk about a lot of things that I really know very well and are very close to my family and I,
Well, it's a good thing that I think that most people go to film, looking for comfort. Instead, you challenge us. You take us to a place that we've never been before, and it's exhilarating to watch Bardo, and I've seen it a few times, because you do take us to a place we've never been and make us think in a way we've never thought before.
I'm so glad. I hope that people laugh. I want to make people laugh. I hope that the film is enlightening, even when it's talk about our last migration that we all will go through one day or not. But to tell a story from that point to the beginning, I think can enlighten what is the priorities about love, about affections, about family, about belonging, and I want that. And
But you
yeah.
also don't, you don't want to answer, everything in a film. You want people to do work and to challenge.
I think that we have been poisoned a little bit too much with a narrative. I think narrative and storytelling suddenly is like the only reason we saw films. And I think film as a medium has a huge amount of other possibilities, as this one, that to not have a narrative, but to have an atmosphere, an experience, an emotional impact that is like a boy meets a girl, blah, 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 plot point, page 27, beat here, oh my God. So all those things for me are now very boring because it's very predictable. I see sometimes, and I said, I know what will happen. Because when you have seen one, you have seen all. So suddenly I like, hopefully, that there's a little bit more openness and not to demand so rational kind of experience. But I wanted to do an experiment about a non-narrative film, about just an experience that opened doors of conscious, subconscious emotions. And I think cinema is that. Buñuel said a line that I always like, that is, a film is a dream being directed. And I think that cinema is a dream. So we know that we are seeing everything is a lie, it doesn't exist. But actually we feel it and transform us as dreams. They mean something, even when they are elusive. And I wanted to explore that. And that I think is fun, and I have an amazing experience, and I'm glad that you appreciate it.
Well, and how fortunate we are that you're in this world and you're making films for us. Truly, I mean, we're so fortunate. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
And so fortunate that you're here with us tonight. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much,
Alejandro.
Thank you, Roger.
Yeah.
Thank you, guys.